Hi, this is Todd Malicote, online marketing consultant at stuntdouble.com and SEO faculty chair at Market Motive, and I'm going to be talking to you today a little bit about the Google Penguin update and understanding exactly what happened in this significant update a little bit better. We'll take a look at what the Penguin update is, the differences between this and another furry zoo creature update, the Panda update. We'll look at if your site has been affected by Penguin and how to identify that, how to identify if it's a penalty, a filter, or a banning based on some negative offsite signals, and what you can potentially do about that in the second part of this series, which is 6 backlink health checks to make sure that you're doing your off-page SEO in the appropriate fashion and that you're not going overboard. And finally, take a look at how SEO is like the price is right in the end of this video. So what is the Penguin update? Well, first it was announced on April 24th of 2012. There was another refresh on May 25th. I'm sure we'll see further refreshes of this update. And it was really a swipe at web spam for the last year and a half before. Google's been telling people, don't buy links, don't buy links, don't buy links. Don't do shady tactics. Don't be excessive with your link building. So link spamming, keyword stuffing, cloaking, all these things have always been against the rules, but they really tightened down the wrenches and said, okay, this stuff is not going to fly anymore. And I think a lot of people appreciated that, but it also took into account some what we'd call over-optimization filters, which in itself is a oxymoron, but we'll look by that and just look at what an over-optimization penalty may incur and how you may bring that upon your site. So the differences between the Panda and the Penguin update. Panda is more of an on-site penalty filter, etc., and it was an update to decrease the amount of content farms or low quality sites in the search results that were making money solely from AdSense and other advertising sources and not really providing much value to users. And the factors involved here were more about engagement and relevance, time on site, number of page views, this sort of thing. There's separate videos on Panda. We're not going to address that here. Today we're talking about the evil little penguin. And the penguin is there to fight over optimization. It's focusing on removing sites that violate the Google search terms of service. So you need to be aware of those and what crosses that line that will incur the wrath of this lovely little penguin. So it's not particularly focused on site. Most of this was from off-site link building if you did incur something that resembled penguin. And it would look a little bit something like this. You will probably know because penguins are no longer cute to you. Thanks to Jonah Stein for some of this presentation and this wonderful image. He's got some great articles on penguin at It's the ROI and has been at doing SEO practicing for over 10 years. Really, really smart guy when it comes to all things Google Update, and he shared this wonderful picture, which I really liked. So you may have been warned by Google at some point previous to the Penguin update and said, hey, you've shown examples of unnatural linking, you're just trying to buy page rank. You may or may not agree with that. It could have been someone in your organization. It could have even been a competitor. That type of thing occasionally happens. It's called negative SEO or Google bowling. It doesn't happen often, but it's something to watch out for, and one of the reasons why you should monitor and do backlink health checks that we'll talk about in the second video. You may have been warned by Google, and you need to be aware of that, and if you did get this warning, you need to be working to fix it. And certainly if you saw that large drop in traffic that occurred on the 24th or maybe even May 25th. So what Penguin is, it's an algorithmic penalty or filter. It's not a manual thing. Matt Cutts didn't go in and ban your site because you bought too many links. It was based on algorithmic principles and saying, hey, you have too many of a certain type of links. We'll look at those and we'll call those negative factors or negative signals and why that may happen. It's a manual action. There's not a reconsideration process. You don't need to go into Webmaster Tools and ask for reconsideration in 90+% of cases. It is a site-wide issue. If you're incurring the wrath of the penguin, it can have effects on your entire site. And it's updated periodically as what's known as a cron job. So maybe monthly this refresh is done. It's not an ongoing rolling algorithm like some of the other Google factors. So it's an anchor text filter. The first version of the Penguin filter. There's the filter and the penalty, and we'll look at the difference between the two here in just a few moments. But the filter is based on anchor text. You might shift 5 to 10 spots. You're going to lose some traffic if they're major terms, but you may not even notice this as much if you're incurring this. There's also lots of other changes going on, so you have to really know that it's Penguin that's affecting your site specifically. So it's going to be keyword or URL specific. One way you can do to fix and change this is try a new page for the same keywords. Just kind of orphan that old page, don't link it anymore, and go out and start a new page on the same exact topic, some of the same content perhaps, and just test a new URL, link it from your homepage, link it from other areas on your site, and see if that fixes the problem. You might have had too much anchor text to that page internally or externally. We'll look again in the 6 health check video on how to test and see if that's the problem. But this is a little less significant or a little less severe. The penalty is going to be more severe. You're going to have ranking drops of 100 spots or more. Your traffic's going to be down very significantly, like we saw in the analytics screenshot there, and you're going to be hit on many keywords across the board, most likely the ones that you're targeting with that specific anchor text. So some of these negative signals that you might have been sending is having unnatural offsite SEO, essentially. You're going to have either unnatural, and when we say unnatural, based on 100 other sites in that search result, what do they have versus what you have? Or within the top 30% of the web, if you're in that top 30%, what do the other top 30% of websites have that's similar? So they're comparing different types of sites and saying, hey, what's natural, what's not natural with regards to website offsite optimization, because they don't really want optimization being done. They just want to see what the best site is, and they want relevance to be their major goal. So when SEO folks were manipulating anchor text, that provided a less than relevant result, and here is the repercussions of that. So you have to check for domain authority distribution. If you have a bunch of high domain authority or high page rank links coming to your site, let's say page rank 7, and then you don't have the proper distribution of lower domain authority or page rank links to your site, that's going to send a signal or a flag that says, hey, this is unnatural. If you have lots of links from penalized sites during the Penguin update, and in that same time frame, lots of blog networks and paid link networks were banned. So if you had links from all those places, you're probably going to incur some kind of penalty at the very least, or filter at the very least, for having that. If you had excessive run of site links, this was one that I was guilty of. I had a link from, let's say, stuntdouble.com over to marketmotive.com on every single page of my site, and it said SEO training or something along those lines. And if I did that on 4 or 5 different sites, that was excessive, and that was deemed over optimization. So they didn't like that. That filter has been put in place. Now this is one of those negative offsite signals, and you have to keep that in mind. Too many of a single link type. If you have all directory listings, if you have all reciprocal links, there are lots of different types of links. But if your diversity isn't there, if you don't balance that link profile, you're going to send negative signals, and that your site isn't worthy of those search results. If you're getting lots of low quality links, if you're getting low click through on those links, if there's not traffic validation that people are coming through clicking on that, if there's no referral data with Chrome, then you're probably sending negative signals. If there's no social validation, if you aren't getting +1s or Facebook likes or that sort of thing, chances are that the page isn't as valuable as the artificial links would suggest. So these are all negative offsite signals that you can be sending to Google, sometimes unintentionally, if you're not getting the appropriate types of links, and if you're just out there buying blog networks or doing the type of things that Google frowns upon. So it did specifically target link building, because there was lots of this link building that Google said, hey, we don't want you to do this, and people did it for years anyway. And then this last year, they finally come around and said, okay, you're going to pay your penance for this. So anybody who's using paid link networks, article submission sites, comment forum spams, excessive directories, bad neighborhoods, site-wide links, all these things kind of came under fire. And if this was your whole entire linking strategy and you didn't have traditional outreach and public relations and legitimate outreach strategies, you are really suffering during this Penguin update. So I really love this quote from Dr. Pete, a great article. Dr. Pete really keeps up on the Google updates. We have a wonderful video with him on the history of Google updates, and Google has stated publicly, under oath in fact, that they've made 500 changes in 2010. The numbers for 2011 are about the same. This is over one change per day. So we're chasing two runaway animals, being penguin and panda, and there's an entire zoo stampeding towards grandma's house, and we're too often doing bad SEO along the way. So we're blaming all these problems on Panda and Penguin, but we knew all along, the people that incurred the penalties, that this was frowned upon. So you really need to know that what good SEO is, what best practices are, how to do proper outreach for off-page optimization, how to do proper on-page optimization without over-optimizing, and overall best practices for good SEO. That way you don't have to chase these animals or these updates around all the time. The folks that tend to be chasing these updates all the time are also the ones that are often saying, but my site's not spamming. And that may be true, but if you're incurring these filters, you're pushing the edge in some way, shape, or form. Sites affected by this change may not be easily recognized as spamming without expertise, but what these sites are doing is much more than white hat SEO, is what Google is saying on their blog post here regarding Penguin. So the web spam team has said anything over optimization is going to incur these penalties. So you have to keep these in mind, whether what you think you're doing is spamming or not. If you're incurring filters, if you're incurring penalties, you need to be aware of what's causing this from those negative signals that you're sending. And you also need to be aware of the Google guidelines. They are basically the law for staying in Google. If you don't want to play the game, if you don't want to be in the Google index, then you're probably not going to be doing SEO. And if you want to be, then you can't be doing these things. And you have to know that eventually they're going to find out. They have wonderfully smart people there, lots of PhDs, lots of amazing engineers, and they're very in tune to what's going on in the world of search and search marketing. So don't think that you're going to get away with this stuff forever. And I think Penguin was a big wake-up call for a lot of people that thought, hey, I can do this stuff forever, and this is going to be my career as a link spammer, as buying reciprocal links or buying blog directories is always going to work, and all my clients are happy. It was probably a pretty severe wake-up call for those people. So those people that did that and have to reform, what do you do now? Well, it's time for off-site link cleanup. I've heard it called link pruning. You have to go through and basically say, these are some crappy links. We have to use these tools and this diagnosis to look at, hey, these are some negative signals that we may be sending Google. So we'll look at this in part 2 of the video, but this is what we'll look at. We'll do a check on our root linking domains and how many of those may be penalized. We'll look at our anchor text. We'll look at site-wide links. We'll look at authority distribution, link diversity, and link velocity. Now, that's a lot of things to consider when it comes to just a link. But this is the foundation of your offsite SEO. And with any of these things, if you're doing something wrong, you can be sending a very significant negative signal to Google about your website. So we want to do a checkup and find out that thing's okay. This will be in the second part of the Penguin video because it's very specific to off-page optimization and doing a better job with that. And every site can benefit from doing these 6 link checkup techniques right now. So one site that did recover, and through doing a handful of these recovery techniques, was WordPressMU.org. And they had lots of run-of-site links. They had some other issues. The WebPro News goes through it pretty well here with this article. And the site owner basically said, hey, we shut off 15,000 site-wide links, lots of footer link root link domains. that were coming back to them. They decreased the anchor text ratio that they were using, the site-wide link volume, and they recovered. So they were able to get it back by making a few significant changes. They said, "Hey, we got a little carried away. We went a little bit overboard. We're dialing it back," and they were re-included here after about a month. So that 30 to 120 day period generally holds up. If you're making serious changes, you do have a chance to get back in there when you're just dealing with a filter. So WordPress MU is a great case study, and we take that and we say, okay, well, we need to do that with our recovery process by looking through our backlink profile. So tips for the future: more social obviously has been growing over the last several years. Diversifying anchor text, focusing on quality and not quantity, making your content link worthy. This is all beyond the scope of today, but this is what you have to keep in mind when you are doing your off-page optimization. So ongoing techniques would be blogging, infographics, and giving something away. You really have to be doing something that people are going to talk about, something you can share, something worthwhile. Ask yourself what's in it for the user and make sure they have a reason to link to you. The main distribution channels you're going to use are still the same. Authority sites, social media channels, traditional media, these are all the same. You're just not going to use those article directories that you probably shouldn't have been using in the first place. And if you were using those, you're going to pay the price for that a little bit. Speaking of the price, we're going to talk about how SEO is like The Price is Right. This is what I feel like all the time now with these new filters. Most significantly, in order to win the Showcase Showdown, you have to be closest to the optimal amount without going over when it comes to targeted anchor text and link diversity. You can go out and have a few run-of-site links. You can have some optimized anchor text. But if you have too much, if you bid $50,000 and the Showcase Showdown is $45,000, you lose. You lose automatically. You're down to Nowheresville, and the person who bids $1 is going to beat you, and the person who's less aggressive and very conservative in their optimization strategy is ultimately going to win. So other ways is you have to win that initial game. You have to get through Plinko and win Plinko, and that's basically the equivalent of getting indexed and building some site authority. Then you have to go and you have to spin that wheel. You have to spin the big wheel and beat out the other two people spinning the wheel by getting some links and getting some better links. And then ultimately, like I said, in order to really win that Showcase Showdown, when you get into the top 10 search results to be the best, you have to be the closest to optimal without going over. That's why I say over-optimization is really an oxymoron, because optimal, you can't ever be over-optimal. But you need to hit that very sweet spot of just getting the right amount of link diversity and right amount of targeted anchor text. With that, we have looked at what the Penguin update is, the differences between Panda and Penguin, if your site may have been affected by Penguin, if that Penguin update may have been a penalty, a filter, or a banning, some negative offsite signals that you might be sending, and ultimately how SEO is like The Price is Right. So we're going to look in the next part of the video at 6 backlink health checks that you can do to make sure that you're not incurring or that you're not sending any of these negative SEO signals. So join me in that next video, and thank you for joining me in the discussion of the Penguin update.